Hello, welcome to Talking Baseball, Episode 3. My name is Joe Mahan,
And my name is Steve Kuplast.
and we're going to start right away talking about Steve's Braves World Series champions 2021. And what are your thoughts on that championship?
I actually enjoyed it, but the only thing I had an issue with was the length of game. The games was just the World Series game was average, I think, about 6 hours long. To me, it's just way too long.
Ridiculous. So what could baseball do to make these games 3 hours and 15 minutes like football?
I think what they need to do is whenever they do pitching changes or substitutions, instead of taking commercial breaks, just go straight, because the pitcher's already been warming up in the bullpen, so just have him come right onto the mound. Maybe he throws a few warm-up pitches on the mound before he gets ready. But
yeah. Now, we were talking about this, not on the show, but just we hang out. Do you think they want these long games because they're making more money with commercials, or?
I think a lot of it has to do with commercials.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, I still think the 95 team was much better.
Yeah, wow. Oh, you think the 95 team?
I think the 95 team, even though it was a strike-shortened season, I still think the 95 team was better.
Yeah. Did the 2021 team have a great regular season?
They did, but they got off to a slow start. They were under 500, I think, until June or July.
Yep.
And then they picked it up when some of their top players came off the disabled list.
All right, so they went on a run.
They went on a run. Like towards the end of the season, like September, they got like really hot the last 3 weeks of the season.
And that's when you want to get hot.
Exactly.
Hey, and they beat the Dodgers. You must have enjoyed that.
Oh, yes, because the Dodgers are I think besides the Yankees, the Dodgers have the second highest payroll.
Right, and you beat the Dodgers. Did they beat Clayton Kershaw in that series, or?
Yes, they beat. No, did they? I think so. I think they did.
And how did Mookie Betts do in that series?
He had a down season. I think it's because of that massive contract he currently has with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to play what's the word? Overcompensate, I guess. Not
overcompensate. Yeah, because the thing is, now Mookie's got a championship with the Red Sox and the Dodgers, so it's kind of like all gravy now.
I don't really count 2020 as a. Oh. Because they only played 60 games that whole season.
Oh, I see.
So who knows what kind of... Because all the teams that weren't supposed to be in, like the Marlins made the playoffs that year.
Oh, well, you mean when the Dodgers won the World Series?
The Dodgers won the World Series in 2020 with the pandemic.
Right.
It was only 60 games long.
And isn't it interesting because the Lakers won that year, the COVID year, and they said that championship is a little kind of an asterisk because that was in the bubble.
Well, they say the same thing about the 95 World Series because they didn't play because they were on strike when the season began.
Yep. Yeah.
Right now, this current baseball season might be on strike this half of the year.
Yep.
But I still think the 95 team was much better than the 2021 team.
Oh, yeah, yep. But you must feel good. That's a long way, going 1995 to 2021 without a championship.
Well, especially because they had the 14-year run where they won the division every single year. And they only won, the 95 was the only year they won. Right. The whole thing.
So that was so cool because we did episode 1 of Talking Baseball. You were talking about your Braves, and they go on to win the championship. And the same thing happened, hopefully. We did the show with Ken Dion talking about his and mine Vegas Golden Knights.
I wasn't there for that one, but I did watch it.
So hopefully the Golden Knights can win the championship. Then we'll be 2 for 2 on our shows.
Exactly.
We'll have an angel on our shoulder if we could get that done.
Maybe if there's baseball this year, maybe the Braves will repeat as champions again.
Well, you must be so happy your Braves are champions.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now you got a nice, you're champions. You don't have, that's a long run going all those years.
Well, it is because they had the 14 straight division titles and they had the one world champion to show for it.
Yep. Because it is a great organization. And then the Braves won the World Series 1914, 1957, 1995, 2021. 57, they won it with Hank Aaron, and they went back in 58 and got beat.
They got beat.
Right,
I think he'll beat them in 58, but...
And you guys and the Braves were in the World Series 1991, 1992, 1995, 1996, 1999, and you got a championship.
Well, 96 and 99, they lost to the Yankees.
Right. Oh,
96 was when the Yankees began their dynasty in the late 90s.
Yep, and you beat the Cleveland Indians.
We beat the Indians in 95. They won in 6 games. I remember watching that. I was like 6, 7 years old when they...
Yep. And then what about 1991 and 1992?
91, they lost. Was that to the Twins? I believe it was the Twins. That was the year that. That was the year that Jack Morris had that greatest World Series game ever.
Okay, yeah, because the Twins won 2 championships.
They did.
All right.
Who they played? 92.
I think they won in 97.
92. They lost to Toronto. I believe it was Toronto. In 92.
So they lost to some good teams.
They did. The Blue Jays had some good teams in the early 90s.
They lost to some good teams. If they lost to Minnesota, who won 2 championships.
They won 2 championships.
And then you lost to that, I think, a very good Toronto team. They won back-to-back.
They won back-to-back.
You lost to the Yankees, so you were going up against good teams.
But 95, the Indians were the best team in baseball that entire season.
Yep.
The Indians were stacked. They had some.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the year that David Justice had that big-time home run.
Yes, because he was criticized. I think if I remember correctly, the Braves were down. There was either 3-2 or 3-1.
Oh, yeah.
And David Justice criticized the Atlanta fans for not supporting the teams.
Yep.
So the fans booed him coming. I think it was in Game 5 or Game 6. He was booed at home.
Yep.
And he has to go ahead home run, and then he becomes like a hero overnight.
Right. Yep. Because you guys needed that one. Yeah. Because right here you won all those division titles. Bobby Cox gets his ring. You got a ring now with the Braves. And then let's go back a little for that 1995 staff. Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, and Wohlers.
Well, the thing about Maddox, because Maddox won 19-2 that year.
Right.
If there was no strike short season, it would have been the best pitching performance in history.
Yeah.
But because he missed, he probably could have easily had 24, 25 wins that season.
Yep, because that was a great staff. And then, of course, I got Henry Aaron. He wins a ring in 1957. He was a National League MVP. Home run 755. But now, who passed him?
Barry Bonds passed him, but there's a lot of criticism.
Is that legit, that Barry Bonds? Or
I mean, I think there's an asterisk next to his name because no one knows when.
Yeah.
Because the thing about Barry Bonds, I think people don't realize, from when Barry Bonds first came up till about 97, 98, or 99,
right,
he was on Hall of Fame track.
Yeah.
But then he started having knee problems.
Right.
So they think sometime from the second half of his career, he started taking something to get to play better.
Yep.
Because Barry Bonds was a guy who hit 40 home runs, stole 40 bases every year.
Yeah, he was on his way to the Hall of Fame before the roids.
Well, that was before he started having knee problems. But sometime it was in the late 90s when he started having knee injuries or knee problems. And then somewhere along the line, he may have taken. No one's been able to ever prove it or not.
Yeah. Yep. Well, what I heard when Sammy Sosa or McGuire went on that great run and they were getting all that attention, then that offseason he went heavy on the roids. You could see it the way he looked. He changed.
Well, I think that was part of it because it was not just McGuire and Sosa, but Kenny Griffey Jr., Larry Walker. They were all getting Vinny Castillo. They were all getting attention, and Barry Bonds felt kind of left out.
Right, because you could see the change in him. Not just his body. Exactly. You know what they say when you take that? But your head gets bigger. And you saw his head was. But now some people are saying, let the people who did roids get in, and then let's just get over it. Well, that's a tough one.
It is because I grew up, like I said, I didn't see Hank Aaron play, but I grew up seeing guys like Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds and all those guys. So it's for me, it's kind of sad seeing players I saw growing up.
Yeah. That
they excluded out of the Hall of Fame. I'm like, these guys, I mean, I know they played in a time of steroids, but.
Yeah, you know what's frustrating? Some players are getting into the Hall of Fame who baseball fans kind of know they're on the roids, but there wasn't as much proof.
Well, David Ortiz is a good example.
He's a good example.
He's the only one that was voted in this season, but
because
there's some criticism
that he was on the roids. Right, and they said he was on the roids in that last World Series where he was just going crazy. But it's not just the roids are going to make you hit home runs. You still have to have the skills.
Oh, yeah.
The good eyesight and things like that.
The thing about David Ortiz, why people get upset, is because he didn't play the field.
Oh, yeah.
So people are kind of saying, well, how can you put a Hall of Famer who didn't play the field?
Yeah, but we were talking about Edgar Martinez.
He eventually got into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer.
It took a long time for him to get in.
Yep, because I like Edgar Martinez, and I also like Paul Molitor.
He's in. He finally got in. It took him a little bit of time. Frank Thomas finally got in. Jim Thome.
Jim Thome was good.
He finally got in.
No, Jim Thome was good.
It took some time because those guys were DHs towards the end of their careers.
Yeah.
To get in.
Because it's...
Howard Baines is another one.
He was a good player, yeah.
Tim Raines, he was a DH towards the end of his career.
Tim Raines, well, you know what story I got about Tim Raines? And, it's just during the 80s, a lot of the players were doing coke. And they said about Tim Raines once, he slid into second base, and he had like a vial in his
I
back
heard
pocket.
about
You
this.
heard him. All right, so I'm not.
This.
He got it together. He was a great player. Now, imagine if base stealing was still prevalent. These games would be 8 hours. Because remember how you had to throw over to first to keep them in check? Because they don't steal bases like they used to.
They don't. I think that's the problem. I think that's why part of the problem with baseball is you don't have the base steals. You don't have you don't have the sacrifice bunts anymore. You have pitchers throwing 7-8 pitches per at bat.
Right.
Because there's something about why, I don't know what it is, but about players taking more walks. And
yeah. Well, did you see Moneyball?
I did see Moneyball.
Okay, I saw it like 10 times. It's one of my cult movies. But remember when Brad Pitt said, why sacrifice? Why give an out up?
Well, because that's how they played. Back when Ricky Henderson was playing, that's what they would do all the time.
They would bunt and get him into scoring position.
But it doesn't happen now. Now it's like they're all about how many home runs can you hit, how many walks can I get.
And the analytics. But now there's some pushback against the analytics as far as football, because, I follow football more than other sports. I can do baseball more on notes and my memory, but football, but there's some pushback now against the analytics in football, because they're saying a lot of the people who write analytics, they're nerds. They never played. Sometimes you have to have a balance with the science and the numbers and emotion, momentum. So
that's why I think former players make the best general managers.
Right.
I mean, I know Billy Beane. He played briefly in the major leagues.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great story about Billy Beane.
It was. He was like a high draft pick, supposed to be the next Joe DiMaggio. It didn't happen.
I think that's a masterpiece, Moneyball. Not just a sports masterpiece, a movie masterpiece.
That was a good movie.
It was.
I mean, I'm sure there was some inaccuracies by the time you put a true story together.
I'll tell you one of the inaccuracies I heard about it. It was from Bob Uecker. You remember the announcer? Yep. You know what he said the inaccuracy was at Moneyball? That team, I believe, had 3 20-game winners. You notice they didn't mention that in the movie?
That's because the team lost. They lost to the Yankees. Was it the Yankees in the playoffs? Yes.
Yeah, but in other words, the regular season, they had a great pitching staff. But you notice in that movie, they didn't mention that. They mentioned more of the analytics.
But the funny part with all those pitchers, they all fell apart at Oakland.
And now Oakland, that's the last franchise they have, because the Golden State Warriors moved from Oakland to San Francisco. The Raiders moved from Oakland to Las Vegas.
Yep.
And that's it for Oakland. That must have been a great city at one time because it's got a big port. But now
but I heard that Oakland, because they were sharing stadiums with the Raiders for a long, long time.
Right, yeah.
That now they might move Oakland out of Oakland, but keep them in California. I don't know where they're going to put them.
Oh, I see. Right. Oh, boy. Yep, because where would they go? Because keep them in California, but,
I've always hoped they put another team in New England just because it would be kind of cool to have 2 New England baseball teams. But
right.
I don't think it will ever happen.
Right. I did a show on that back in the day with Lisa Kelly. She's from Minnesota. And I was asking her, is it possible that Rhode Island could have a major league team? Why do we always have to be, like in the movie Braveheart, getting the scraps off Longshank's table? Yeah. She made a good point. Rhode Island doesn't have a big enough. We have about 1 million people. But do you think there could be another team in New England?
I think there could be, because now that the Paw Sox are in Rhode Island anymore, maybe they could turn McCoy, maybe keep it at McCoy Stadium, but maybe, what's the word?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe fix up McCoy Stadium, make it like a major league.
Right, yeah.
Because I don't think anybody's using that field right now.
I know, you're right, yep.
But that'd be kind of cool. But I don't think it will happen because the Red Sox are like the main team in New England, so I don't think they'll ever put it up.
No, and I don't think they should. Because if Hartford was a big-time city, but even then, Hartford is between Red Sox Nation and Yankee Nation. Exactly, so those are those fans. But Hartford never became, like what I think, like a Boston, a really big-time city. They got the logistics, but they just never made it happen. Why do you think that is? Because it's between Boston and New York?
I think it's because of the fact that we only have one baseball team, one football team, one hockey team.
Because,
I think if anything, if they use McCoy Stadium, maybe they'll make it like an independent team or something. Or maybe they'll move like another minor league team eventually back here. But
yeah, because I think that's a good idea when you have the minor league team near the parent team. Because sometimes they'll have, you could have like a team in the East Coast and their farm system is in the West Coast. I don't think.
I think what they should do is have at least a AAA team closer to the.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like you had.
Because I know in Brockton, Massachusetts, they have the independent baseball team that has a stadium down there.
Yep.
But
yeah,
I mean, they're not a part of any major league team or anything.
Yep. Who's the most famous? Two sports guys from Brockton. Who are they? Give you a hint. Boxing. Rocky Marciano. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He's from New Jersey, but he moved to Brockton when he was a teenager.
Well, I used to live in Brockton, so so they always have statues of Rocky all over.
So you know, wow, yeah. So you used to live in Brockton.
For a little bit of time, so I heard all the different stories of Marciano.
Rocky Marciano retired undefeated. And Marvelous Marvin Hagler, well, we know what happened with that Sugar Ray fight. He didn't lose. A champion should never lose when they have to chase you around the ring. You can't take someone's title that way. If it's a non-title bout, different. But all right, back to your Braves.
We got off topic.
We got off topic. But we were talking sports. But Henry Aaron, 3,771 hits. 2297 RBI. You know what's impressive about Henry Aaron with all those home runs? A career average 305. That's no joke.
No, but Ty Cobb still holds the record for that. I think he had like a 370-something career average.
I'll tell you what, Ty Cobb, if you put him today, that was a good question. I just turned the page and I had Babe Ruth, who I consider the GOAT. I'll tell you what, if Babe Ruth isn't the GOAT of baseball, it might be Ty Cobb.
Exactly. I think they played around the same era.
Yep, he's that good, Ty Cobb. Imagine if he played today. I don't know if he got championships. He probably did, but they said he was.
No, if he did, because I don't think he ever did. I know he won a batting title almost every single year he played.
Yep. Yeah, because back then you're on the team you're on.
Exactly. You weren't going. There wasn't trade. I mean, there was trades made, but there wasn't free agents going all over the place.
Right.
And
like Babe Ruth won 3 rings as a pitcher. 1915, 1916, 1918.
All Red Sox.
All Red Sox. 94 and 46 record as a pitcher. Then he goes to the Yankees, and he was already starting to hit a little with the Red Sox. But either way, he goes to the Yankees and becomes the greatest offensive player in history. So how is he not the GOAT? He's the GOAT of baseball.
Oh, exactly. He is.
There's no question about it.
But I mean, there was years he was hitting more home runs than teams combined.
Right, yep. And the thing was, like I've written about this in football poems, Babe Ruth is the GOAT of GOATs. Because Tom Brady's considered the GOAT of football.
Exactly, yeah.
Michael Jordan, basketball, although some people think Bill Russell with 11 championships, and Wayne Gretzky, the GOAT of hockey. But Babe Ruth, no one's done that, to be a pitcher and then break all the offensive records.
Oh, he broke some of his own records.
Right. I mean, the Yankees never gave him a shot to be a manager?
No,
he wanted it.
I think he wanted to, but I don't think he ever managed it before.
I know, but just why wouldn't a team that stinks give him a shot just for the box office? There was something like, I think there was something, collusion.
I don't know, maybe, because I know Ted Williams ended up managing.
Yeah,
but he managed a bad team towards the end of his.
Yeah, and the thing was with Babe Ruth, he wanted to be a manager. So if you don't be a manager for the Yankees, have some other team hire him, because I'm a big Babe Ruth supporter.
Exactly.
And so what that he used to, back then the sports reporters wouldn't write what was going on. He was chasing a woman through the train once,
But I do think he hit more home runs than what the record says.
Yeah. No, but he was chasing a lady through the train once. They were both not in their pajamas or less than. He was a maniac, but I'm a big Babe Ruth supporter, great athlete, and like we talked about this on the other show, he had that great hand-eye coordination. Yeah. If you were starting a baseball team, maybe all time, who would you think about? Those are the pitchers I want on my staff.
Well, can I go through every position?
I know you're going to go. Yeah.
I would go. So the catcher, I would take Ivan Rodriguez.
Okay, yep.
Who would I take? Let's see. DH, I would go with Edgar Martinez because I thought he was like one of the best I saw growing up.
He was.
I would probably take players I saw growing up. First base. A little tricky. I would probably go with Mo Vaughn just because he was the first player who fell.
Yeah. Mo Vaughn fell off the cliff fast. Did he fall off after he got that big money contract, or he just fell apart?
Just injuries.
Right, fell apart.
Second base would be Roberto Alomar. No question.
He was so good, yep.
He was probably one of the better all-around second basemen I ever saw.
Shortstop, you better say who I think you're going to say. Captain? Derek Jeter?
Either Derek Jeter or Nomar, because I was a huge Nomar fan growing up. Right, so it was either one of those two. So I mean, maybe I'll take both, have one start, one come off the bench.
Nomar was good. And how about third base?
Third base, I'll go with Chipper Jones just because he's one of the better switch hitters I ever saw.
Yeah, and that's a great skill to be a switch hitter.
And then my outfield will be Manny Ramirez, Ken Griffey Jr., and probably Larry Walker.
Wow.
In my outfield.
Okay. Now, what about your pitchers?
Pitchers, I definitely have to go with Pedro.
Right, definitely.
I would have to go with Maddox, Smoltz, and Glavine.
Right, yep.
And I'd probably go with someone like David Cohn or Roger Clemens.
Oh, yeah.
One of those two.
Right, David Cohn. I think David Cohn, I know he did. He had a no-hitter. He might have had a perfect game.
He did have a perfect game. I saw his perfect game on TV.
Yep.
And my closer would be Mariano Rivera, just because
just the best.
He was the best ever.
At what he did. It was a bummer that he got burned on that squib hit by who got that at Arizona?
Luis Gonzalez.
That
was. There was a couple that come to mind with Mariano. It was against the Red Sox in 2004 when Bill Miller had the game tie-in hit.
Right, yep.
And the Red Sox made that comeback, and then obviously Luis Gonzalez in 2001.
When Marvin Rivera came up, I'm assuming he was a starter.
He was a starting pitcher.
And then
I think the Yankees I think he struggled as a starter, and the Yankees saw that he had the cutter, and they figured they can use him in the bullpen, and then he became one of the best closers ever.
Imagine knowing that's the pitch coming, and you still can't hit it with his cutter.
Exactly. That was that was his pitch he was known for.
Oh, man. Because Eckersley started out as a pitcher and was a really good starting pitcher.
He was.
Then he morphed into went to the Hall of Fame as a reliever.
Well, I think Tony La Russa, when he had him in Oakland, saw Eckersley as more of a closer type.
Where you could come in and pitch an inning and just let it all rip. But his claim to fame, Eckersley has given up that home run
to Kirk Gibson.
Right. Yep.
But I think if I remember, Eckersley is the last reliever to win the Cy Young Award.
Right. Yep. No, he's impressive.
I think I could be wrong though.
And now he's on NESN.
He's on NESN.
A friend of mine, he loves his Red Sox. He'll watch the pregame show, the game, and the post-game show. I say to him, because I've watched games with them, and I say to him sometimes, what is that taking you, 8 hours? I mean, he loves his Red Sox.
It has to, though, because I would think because the game, obviously, the average game last year was 6 hours long.
Right. And then
you figure the pregame is about an hour long, and then the postgame is about an hour long.
Right.
But to me, I don't really care about the pregame or postgame.
Yeah, that's why he loves it. And you're being nice saying they're an hour and an hour. Some of them are an hour and a half, 2 hours. Oh, yeah. But you got Jimmy Rice on.
Jimmy Rice, Tom Caron.
Yep.
Sometimes they'll have like Brian Dahlbach come on.
Yeah. But now, what do you think as far as going into the 2022 season? Who do you like in both leagues?
Well, it's kind of tough right now because right now baseball is locked out. So who knows? So obviously the regular season, the spring training has already been delayed.
Oh man!
So all the top free agents that still haven't been signed yet, they're probably going to end up back on the teams they were with last year.
Okay, yeah. So baseball is going to be.
I think so. I don't even know if baseball is going to play or not this year.
Yep.
Hopefully they do.
Yeah.
But if I had to say, I think the Braves have a good shot to repeat.
Yeah.
Red Sox, I think, are a little questionable. I think the Yankees are still questionable.
Right.
I think the Rays, Tampa Bay has a very good team.
Yeah. Is that Aaron Judge? He started out like a comet. Is he? He's
still with the Yankees.
Is he looking as good as he did when he first came up, or is he leveling off?
I think he's a little leveling off because the Yankees haven't signed him to a long-term deal yet. I think he's a free agent at the end of the year.
Leveling off.
So I think the Yankees are looking at something else to replace Aaron Judge at some point.
Yeah, because he started out like a house on fire.
He did. He broke McGuire's rookie record for most home runs in a single season.
Yeah, and that was amazing with McGuire and Sosa when they had that run.
And
wow, Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa, we talked about this on one of the shows or at church. When he came up, he was our size. 160, 165, something like that.
He was also caught using a cork bat as well. So I remember watching that game I think it was on ESPN. His bat broke and they figured out it was corked.
Oh, man,
Because Sammy Sosa He has some Babe Ruth type years for a little.
He did.
Late 90s, early 2000s. He's putting up some Babe Ruth numbers.
Yeah. That was with the Cubs.
The Cubs.
I got the notes. We were talking recently about the '69 Miracle Mets. So who was the pitcher we were saying? Nolan Ryan. He was on that champ.
But I don't think he was a starting pitcher. I think he was a reliever at the time.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't think
he got a ring.
He did get a ring on that team.
Yeah, because all those other years when he was with Houston and Texas, they never went to the World Series. Because I like Nolan Ryan. He's a little wild. You got to watch it. You don't dig in when you're in the batter's box against him. But I liked him, and I like that famous story where Robin Ventura charged the mound. It was like Nolan Ryan, like, what? You're going to charge the mound? Nolan Ryan, after games, would work out, get on the exercise bike. So,
I don't think pitchers do that these days.
So he was ahead of the curve, But
I'm kind of curious, though, how baseball, if they do have baseball this year, because the designated hitter is going to be now in both leagues full time.
Oh, wow.
So I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to work with the National League because the pitchers are so used to batting now. So.
That's probably about time to do that.
I think so, but I know it's going to decrease the amount of sacrifice bunts, pinch hits.
Right, yeah, because
obviously pinch runners, you're not going to see that happen much anymore.
Yeah, because now a game's longer in the National League because the pitchers hit and they have to do all that maneuvering, or
I don't think so. I think because the reason why it's so long is, one, because you have batters not swinging at first pitches anymore.
Oh, yeah, yep.
So you're getting like 8-9 pitches per at bat.
Yep, get into the count.
You're using, to me, between two teams, when you have 18-19 pitches being combined for one game and all the commercial breaks.
Yep. Yeah, so they got to do something because so what's going on? Because I don't watch these World Series games. If the game starts at 8:30 Eastern time, what time is that game over? At 1 a.m.?
It's usually 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. The only way I'll be up
2
till then.
o'clock.
Only time I'll be up is if I don't have to work the next day or if I had nothing going on the next day. But I think if they start the games, if they want to start the games at like 6:30 or so.
Yeah. Or find a way to get them like football, 3 hours and 15 minutes.
They should, because I remember going up there was the average. The average baseball game was about a little over 3 hours long, sometimes 4, depending on how many innings it went. Because
the fans aren't going to. Do these fans stay for 5-6 hours? They're probably out.
I think if you had like a die-hard fan,
you'll stay.
I mean, I'm a die-hard fan, but I mean, sometimes by like the 6th inning when it's like 5 hours long, it's like, is this game over yet?
Hey, now in baseball, when do they shut off selling beer now? It's like 7th inning?
I think it's at the 7th inning now.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because people have to still drive home.
Right, because, because I'll tell you what, now, I've been to Fenway a few times. I enjoyed the night games and the day games, but I really enjoyed that
For me, I prefer day games.
Okay.
Just because I'm not a night person.
Yeah, all right.
So,
yeah, I like, what's nice about Fenway is the fans are so knowledgeable.
Yeah, yes.
So you could be talking about Jimmy Rice, the Rooster, Rick Burrell, anything. Babe Ruth, very knowledgeable fan.
But now they start, because now the Red Sox have won multiple World Series. They bring Bill Buckner comes back to mind now for a lot of fans.
I tell you what, he took the brunt of that blame for so many years, where the people who know, we were blaming Calvin Schiraldi, Bob Stanley, the manager.
But Bill Buckner gets
Billy Buckner because he was at the apex of
he still gets blamed for it, but people have kind of forgotten, kind of in a way, with all the championships they've won in the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, that is, it's almost like Shakespearean, because earlier in that game, because he was wearing high tops, he had 2 bad ankles.
He did, yep.
He looked like Johnny Unitas, and he dove to home plate and slid. He was going to be the hero of that game, and then what happens an hour and a half later? So he went from this to
basically like the bottom.
Right, the bottom.
Because I know that closer for the Angels, that same postseason when Dave Henderson hit that home run.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That Angels closer, I can't think of his name. The guy who gave the home run to Dave Henderson, he ended up committing suicide because of it. Oh,
wow. Yeah.
I can't think of the guys. I can't think of the pitcher's name.
Right, I remember that. Yeah, Dave Henderson, he was good.
He hit that home run off of that Angels pitcher in that same postseason.
Yep. And, because like we were talking about, like you said, Bill Buckner is right on the edge of Hall of Fame. Won some batting titles.
He would have been a Hall of Famer, but I think that era in the World Series overlooks his whole career.
It does, because the same thing kind of with Roger Craig in football. He's a Hall of Famer to me because he was a running back and he would catch.
Yep.
He was the first one that had 1,000 yards catching and 1,000 yards. But the reason he's not in the Hall of Fame because he had a big fumble in the NFC Championship game in San Francisco. Lawrence Taylor stripped him. Sometimes voters will weigh that. Like Billy Buckner, they win that World Series if he's a Hall of Famer because he's like
Well, I think if they won Game 7, because that was Game 6.
Right.
So there's still another game to play. If the Red Sox had won Game 7,
then
I think
he would have been Hall
people
of
would have
Famer.
forgotten about the. Right. And they would have known it was there, but he would have. He would have been.
Oh, I see what you mean. Even if they lost Game 6 with that.
I mean, they lost Game 6 anyway.
Game
but if they had won
then
Game
they
7,
oh, forget about that. They won.
They would have forgot about
point.
the. I mean, the error would have still been there, but they wouldn't have been talked about for such a long time.
Because he was like, we'll find out, but he was like 100 hits short of 3,000.
I think
with some
like
batting
yes.
titles. I mean, and it was ridiculous what Red Sox fans did to Bill Buckner.
Well, they eventually, when they won the World Series in 2004, they welcomed him back. I think that following season, and they kind of forgave him.
Yeah. Oh, they kind of forgave him. How about the Red Sox were up 3-0 in Game 7? I'm not saying that's insurmountable. How about winning Game 7? Or how about getting your teammate off the hook?
Exactly.
Well, you see that in sports all the time. They get him off the hook. Like they got Jalen Ramsey off the hook in Tom Brady's last game in Tampa Bay. He would have gave up a long bomb touchdown.
Exactly.
But what happens? His team wins the game. You get him off the hook. But they didn't get Billy Buckner.
Well, it could be the same thing
with
Mariano Rivera because he gave up because obviously he gave up the game when he hit in the World Series in 2001.
Yep.
But he had obviously, since he was the greatest closer ever.
He was. Yep. Yeah, he's one of my favorite players because I'm a Red Sox fan, but I'm not a Yankee hater. I respect them. I respect the Yankees just like I respect the Lakers. But you got Derek Jeter, those early teams with Brocious, Paul O'Neill.
Paul O'Neill's going to have his number retired finally this upcoming season if they have baseball this year.
Okay, yeah, because Paul O'Neill got a championship with that Cincinnati team. He's got the championship. He was amazing. Remember the dugout? He would be getting the bat, and he was fired up. I
think my favorite Yankee was probably Bernie Williams because I know the Red Sox. He came very close to signing with the Red Sox.
He was class act.
He came, but he's a guy that I think should be in the Hall of Fame, but he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, because Bernie Williams was a great fielder because he played center field.
He was, but he was
a good hitter.
He was a switch hitter.
Yeah,
he hit some home runs, drove in runs. He was basically a cleanup hitter.
Yeah,
but he's not in the Hall of Fame. He won some Gold Gloves.
Yeah, no, you're right. He was a good player.
But he's one of the ones that Bernie Williams and Andrew Jones are two people that can't figure why not in the Hall of Fame.
He came up like a comet. Andrew Jones.
Yes.
19 years old, I believe, was in the big leagues.
He had a home run in his first two at bats in the World Series in that
he was
96
good.
season.
Yep. Yeah, he came up. But, he was a good ball player.
I think what happened with Andrew Jones is after he left Atlanta, his career just went downhill.
Yeah. Well, it must be tough because baseball, they make so much money compared to football. Football, you're not astronomically rich like you are in baseball and the NBA. So I wonder, and a lot of times you're making that kind of money. Does your motivation wane? You're not going to be like a Tom Brady.
I think it does.
And it's natural.
No, yeah.
And plus, also, if you get a ring, because that's natural too. Well, if you get a ring, it's kind of like, well, I reached the mountaintop. I'm not saying you give less, but, that's why you see a lot of players who didn't get the ring, like a Charles Barkley.
Oh, Ken Griffey Jr.
Griffey Jr.
I think Ken Griffey Jr. is the greatest player that ever played without ever winning a ring.
Right, yep. Now, you were saying maybe earlier in his career or maybe midway when he's 28 or something, get out of Seattle.
I think
go to the Yankees.
He didn't actually. He had an opportunity to go to the Yankees, but he didn't want to play with George Steinbrenner.
Wow. Yeah.
So because he didn't want to play with the racial owner at the time.
Right. He didn't want to play with Steinbrenner.
But if he had gone to the Yankees, he would have been part of that dynasty in the late 90s.
Right. Yep. Well, were there other organizations? Well, maybe he just said, "I'm happy where I am."
Well, I know that he eventually went back home to Cincinnati, but I'm sure that I know the Red Sox had an opportunity to get Ken Griffey Jr. in there. Again, he didn't want to come to a racial city.
Yep. Oh, yeah,
and I know when Mo Vaughn was in Boston, he was trying to convince Ken Griffey Jr. to come to Boston, but
he
he didn't want to play with he didn't want to be part of a racial organization.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. Ken Griffey Jr. did go back home to Cincinnati.
He did, and then
they got a great organization. They won championships.
But he wasn't.
Couldn't get it done.
He couldn't get it done. He was injured a lot when he got back to Cincinnati. Then he came back to Seattle, went to the White Sox for a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of his injuries were caused by the way he played center field, crashing into walls, diving.
But when he was moved to right field, the injuries kind of settled down a little bit.
He was considered great with the glove, Ken Griffey Jr.
He
was his arm considered as good?
I think he was a better fielder, obviously, than the thrower. But I know that he had. Obviously, he could hit. And I mean, he probably had the best swing I ever saw anybody play.
Yeah, he did. He had a really nice. I think Bernie Williams had a really classic batting stance.
He did, because Bernie Williams was a switch hitter.
Yeah, he had a really nice batting stance. So did Ken Griffey Jr. I think Edgar Martinez. Notice the great hitters, they have a good batting stance.
I think the hottest one, though, that I ever saw was probably Julio Franco.
Oh, you're right. Julio Franco, as good as he was, his stance was crazy with the bat. Yeah, you're right.
But it's not as crazy as Craig Counsell's batting stance.
Oh, yeah. Because Paul Molitor had a swing. It was almost like a robotic. Paul Molitor, just straight through. Where Julio Franco, was he a good player?
He was. He played for a long time.
Yeah, Julio Franco, I liked him. And we were talking about Blackjack Morris, the pitcher. Yeah, 3 rings on 3 different teams: the Tigers, the Twins, and Toronto.
The Blue Jays. Yep.
With Toronto, we were talking before, where Dave Winfield got his ring.
He did with the Blue Jays. He was actually towards the end of Dave Winfield when he was with the Yankees. He got fed up with George Steinbrenner.
Oh, right, yeah, because George Steinbrenner called him Mr. May. Oh,
yes,
you can only play it. Boy, that's a nice thing to say of someone you brought in on a high
salary. I think he
take a shot like that.
I think the Yankees did he leave or did he get traded? I can't remember if he left or got traded, but
yeah,
he eventually won a ring towards the end of his career with the Blue Jays.
Yeah, imagine George Steinbrenner calling him. Well, the thing about George Steinbrenner, he got that championship later. When he was in his 70s. And I'm hoping, I don't know the way they're going, he's going to do it in football if Jerry Jones can do it. Because he got his 3 championships 27 years ago. Can Jerry Jones get another championship like George Steinbrenner did? Now, George Steinbrenner, for all his faults, he was a good owner.
He was. Because won
how many championships? Wow.
I think something like that. Maybe 6, a little more. But
right.
I know with George Steinbrenner, every year if his team didn't win the World Series, he's like, hey, he would say it was a failed year because his team didn't win. Yeah, because the Yankees, they won back-to-back championships in the 70s. They went to 3 in a row. They won back-to-back. Then they won the 3 or 4 with Jeter early on. Then they won another one later on when A-Rod got his ring. I don't think George Steinbrenner was he.
I think he was still alive for that last one. Cashman was running the show, but he was a good owner. You know how he made his money? Steinbrenner? No. Well, his dad was in the shipping business in Cleveland. You know what I mean? It's amazing how some owners make the money themselves and others, we'll say Jonathan Kraft, he was born into it. Mark Cuban of the Dallas Mavs, he made his money. Broadcast.com. He sold it for billions.
I heard about that one.
And the rest is history. He bought the Mavs. Some owners, most owners in sports, they grow up in it. That must be nice when your parents own a team. Like Jonathan Kraft, or you can go on and on. I'd have to think of, some owners, I think he might have made his money in football is that Tepper of the Carolina Panthers. He made it on Wall Street.
I can't think of his name. I know you're talking about. I don't know his name.
I admire that, the people who made a fortune and then bought a team, as opposed to, my family's owned the team, and now I'm the general manager.
Well, that's how it is with the Yankees right now, because his son, Steinbrenner's son, owns the team right now.
Yep, yeah.
But he's not. I don't think he's as invested as his dad was. Because the Yankees haven't won since 2009.
Right. Yep. Oh, the Yankees got to get it done. Yep. If they haven't won since then. Wow. So, whoa. That's a long. I didn't realize that. That's a long time.
Yankees haven't won the World Series since 2009.
Oh, and they still got Cashman.
Cashman's still a GM, but he's on the hot seat because
I would think so.
They haven't been able to win the World Series since 2009.
Right. I was thinking 13 years, and I would say, we might be looking for, I don't know if I'd be a good owner or GM because I might go off the top of my head and doing things. I would say, what's Theo Epstein doing? You know what I mean?
I don't even think I think he's like a president now or something.
Right, yeah. He's got it done. He broke the two curses.
I'm surprised he hasn't gone to Cleveland yet, because Cleveland hasn't won since the 40s.
Yep. And they were close.
They were close when they lost to the Cubs.
Right, they were close with Francona.
The 2016, that was like one of my favorite World Series, because you had two teams ever won in such a long time.
Yep, yeah. So Francona was the manager rather, when they broke the curse, right? 2004.
In 2004, yes.
And then
he went to Cleveland.
Then gets to Cleveland, gets them to the World Series.
But I was kind of disappointed with how Francona's tenure in Boston kind of ended.
Oh yeah, that was
I don't think you can just blame it for the downfall in 2011 just all on Terry Francona.
Right. Yeah, there was. We know the stories what about. Yes. They were saying they're playing cards in the locker room and drinking beers and this and then what do they do the next year? They bring in Bobby Valentine,
and they did even
just
worse.
Blew up. Right. Bobby Valentine.
But I think Bobby Valentine was the scapegoat for the problems that had happened the year before.
Right, yeah. And obviously Terry Francona showed, I can manage. You know what, to me, was one of his claims to fame, Terry Francona? I know it's a footnote. He was Michael Jordan's minor league manager that year.
He was. I remember hearing about that, yes.
That's an excellent documentary. If you ever want to see it, you probably did. I've seen it a few times where Michael Jordan went to baseball. Because Terry Francona said... Because Michael Jordan, you know how he is. He's like a Tom Brady. He'll be there at 8 in the morning and 8 at night.
Yeah, exactly.
And Francona said, well, because he played in the Autumn League after the regular season. And they said after a while, he was starting to hit it on the screws. And Terry Francona kind of said, quote, he would have found his way to the major leagues. But the next year, baseball was on strike, and Jordan went back to basketball.
Exactly. I think if baseball was going on strike, he would have
found his way back to the major leagues, Michael Jordan, because then he goes back to the NBA and they win 3 championships.
Well, there's a few things that could have happened had baseball finished the '94 season.
Right.
I think the Expos would still be in Montreal.
Yep.
Because they were the best team when baseball went on strike that year.
Yeah.
So I think the Expos would have won the World Series because they were built to win the World Series that year.
And then if they won it, they would probably stay there.
Was it Matt Williams or Tony Gwynn? One of those two was close to hitting 400. It would have happened.
Right. Yeah, he was a good player, Matt Williams.
I can't remember if it was Matt Williams or Tony Gwynn. It was one of those two that was very close to hitting 400.
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought up Jim Thome, because there was another guy who had a classic batting stance. He was a good player. That Cleveland team, the Cleveland fans must be frustrated losing those World Series. Not just the one with the Mannies, but the one recently.
Not just the World Series, but also not the postseasons too.
Right, yeah.
Because they had Albert Bell and Jim Thome and Manny Ramirez.
Right. He was good, Albert Bell.
He was good. He had the hip injury towards the end of his career.
Right. Yeah, Albert Bell was good. Manny Ramirez.
But the funny thing about Albert Bell is he almost joined the Red Sox over Manny Ramirez.
Wow, yeah.
Because the Red Sox were pursuing both of them.
Yeah.
And then Albert Bell chose Baltimore, and the Red Sox went after Manny instead.
Wow.
But had it been the other way around,
yep.
Albert Bell playing in Boston over Manny Ramirez, that would have been something to watch.
Because Manny Ramirez, pure hitter. Now, he's headed to the Hall of Fame, you think?
He's on the Hall of Fame ballot, but I don't think he's going to get in because of he was caught twice with steroids.
Yep.
With roids.
Yeah.
So I don't think he'll ever get in.
Yeah.
Just because he was caught twice, and he retired the second time after.
Yeah.
So
I remember I was covering the Red Sox for my public access show. So I was down there. I'll never forget, Manny pulled up in, I guess, one of those SUVs.
Yeah.
Was gold with the rims was spinning. You know what I mean? Like when the car stopped, the rims were still spinning. Manny gets out, and that was when they had Pedro. But if you had your druthers, and you could be or could have been a pro athlete, what sport would you pick?
I would have picked baseball. Just because it was because as a kid, it was the only sport I could play without getting injured. Really.
Right. Yeah, because football, you know, who knows what could happen. You know, it would be a nice. I don't play. I played for 2 years. No, it would be a nice sport to play professionally, golf. Because
I've actually played the frisbee. I played the frisbee golf.
Yeah. Play golf for a career. Baseball. Now, if you played baseball, would you want to be a pitcher?
No, I would have been a first base because that was my favorite position as a kid. I was a huge Mo Vaughn fan as a kid, so Mo Vaughn was a first baseman, so that's where I would have played.
Yeah, I like Mo Vaughn.
First base.
Yep. It's too bad his career. Like I said, I remember he was doing great, and all of a sudden he seemed like he fell off a cliff, and then he said, "I'm retired."
I think it's because he had the knee problems toward the end of his career. Like His first game with the Angels, he fell into the dugout trying to go into the fly ball.
Oh, you're right. Oh, yeah, that'll kill
And I think that's kind of what. I mean, he still was productive, but that fall into the dugout kind of messed his career up.
That'll mess you up. And a lot of things was with Mo. He wasn't exactly in the best shape. And
no, but I mean, he was a big guy.
He was big, but he wasn't in. He was big, but he wasn't in great shape.
No, but I know that he had issues with the Red Sox front office people towards the end of his.
Right. Yeah.
Like if he had stayed in Boston, I think he would have been a Hall of Fame player.
Wow. Yeah. Now, what about Nomar? Like, why did they get rid of him?
He got rid of him because was it 2002 or 2003? They offered him a long-term contract, and he declined it.
Oh,
okay. Because of money.
All right. Yeah.
So when they tried to pursue Alex Rodriguez, who was the top shortstop at the time, it kind of. And Nomar was the second best shortstop. He was kind of offended by it.
Well, right, because at the time I remember that.
Because he had turned down that huge contract to stay in Boston, the Red Sox felt okay. It's time to move on from him.
Right, because he was kind of frustrated. He kind of thought I'm the best shortstop in baseball, but you also had Alex Rodriguez and
they were trying to go at
Derek Jeter.
Well.
And Jeter, a lot of it was he got the hardware.
Well, A-Rod run it out of Texas because A-Rod had just completed his third year in Texas, and he was on losing teams.
Wow, yeah.
So the trade, I forget who, Nomar was going to get traded to, I think, one of the Chicago teams.
Yep.
Which obviously ended up happening.
Yeah.
And then I think A-Rod was going to come to Boston, and Manny was going to go out to Texas, but...
Yeah, and Nomar went
was kind of...
to L.A.
He was to L.A. afterwards, but I know that if Nomar never turned down that long-term contract to stay in Boston, he would have probably just stayed there.
Yeah, he would have. Yep.
He would just play his whole career in Boston.
Now, Nomar, I'm almost sure he's from L.A., right?
I believe so.
I
think
that
that's why he
nice.
went back to
LA.
that
must be nice going home.
But I remember when he made his return to Fenway with Oakland.
Yep.
The year before he retired, his last year playing, he was.
Yeah.
I think he was emotional about it.
Yeah. And didn't he win back-to-back batting championships?
He did. He won a title. He won the back-to-back in, was it 99 and 2000?
Yep.
That was back when the Red Sox went that
great. He was good. Because I remember when he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated with no shirt. And that was before the roids. Yeah, that was before the roids. The word was out there. But you could, you could see, wow, this guy is, you could start, because back then, sports writers weren't saying a word.
They weren't. Exactly.
Not a word, and fans could see it. I mean, what's this,
But I do, when Nomar was productive, he was like the toughest out in baseball.
Oh, yeah, yep. Yeah, because...
I mean, one year he had like 370 was like the highest average any Red Sox player has hit since Ted Williams, when Ted Williams hit 400.
Oh, I didn't know that. He had
370. He won the batting title that one. Yes. Whatever year. I forget. It was either 99 or 2000, one of those 2 years.
So maybe he was saying, I want the money that those other guys are getting, but those are great shortstops.
Well, he had the opportunity, but he turned down that. It was after like 2002 or something. He turned down a massive contract.
Right.
Extension with the Red Sox.
Yeah. Who was the shortstop for the Indians? Vizquez?
Omar Vizquel.
Oh, what a pro, huh?
He was one of the better. He was one of the better defensive players.
He was. Sometimes I'll take a shortstop who might not be that good with the bat. You give me that kind of glove. Shortstop.
The funny thing is at the same time, okay, you had Omar Vizquel and Roberto Alomar. So between the two of them, they had over 20 Gold Gloves between the two of them.
Yeah. Sometimes
you had one at second, one at shortstop.
Yeah, sometimes at those positions, shortstop and second base, I'll say, you know what? I'll sacrifice the bat, hit seventh. Oh, yeah. You give me that kind of glove up the middle.
Sometimes, I mean, there was days where I would go on YouTube and just watch Alomar and Vizquel make.
Yeah, they were good. They were real good.
They were
and then
really
Tommy at first.
Well, Tommy was a third baseman before he got moved to first.
Who was that? So Tommy was at third, and so who was that first baseman?
I want to say it was Eddie Murray or...
Eddie Murray,
I think it was Eddie Murray, I believe, at the time.
Eddie Murray, who won the championship with the Orioles in '83.
When the Indians brought in Matt Williams, they moved Jim Tomey to first. So
all right, good point. Eddie Murray, total pro, and another switch hitter.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, Eddie Murray was good. So that was a good team, that Cleveland team.
There was. That's why I'm surprised they said that 95 team when the Braves beat them in 95.
Yeah, that was a good team. Because they're saying in baseball, if you have things in order up the middle, shortstop, second base, center field, and catcher, you're in a good position. And the Indians
had that with Kenny Lofton in center, Sandy Alomar as a catcher, Vizquel and Alomar in the middle.
So if you were a baseball GM, how would you build your team? Would you build it around defense? I would.
I would build my defense between catcher, shortstop, second base, and center field.
Me too.
My leadoff hitter would be the center fielder, obviously.
Yep.
You need a second base or shortstop as my number 2 hitter.
Yeah, because that's how I would build.
And then I would put like my third hitter would either be my right fielder or first baseman.
Yeah. because you're right. Kenny Lofton was he smooth?
He was smooth.
Smooth. There was a center fielder, I believe it was Gary Maddox Sr., played for the Phillies.
I saw his son, Gary Maddox Jr.
Right. They used to say 3/4 of the earth is covered by the ocean. The other 1/4 is covered by Gary Maddox. That's how good he was in center field. He was like 6'4", so he was a gazelle out there running it down. They had a cool guy in that Phillies team that won the championship. Because some of the
recently
guys,
or the one
Bake McBride. You talk about a cool name.
I forgot about that one.
Bake McBride, and then they had Mike Schmidt. They won the championship. Philadelphia fans, they are in all the sports. They are diehard fans, but they don't get that many championships.
No, when the Phillies won the World Series in 2008.
Right. And they thought that team was going to go on and do more.
They did, but obviously the injuries got Ryan Howard, Chase Utley.
Didn't Chase Utley go to Washington and get paid?
He went to L.A.
Yep.
But Ryan Howard, he got injured.
Yeah.
I think who else? Shane Victorino came to Boston eventually.
Yeah, so the Phillies won it in the 80s, and then
And in 2008, they beat Tampa Bay in 2008.
Right, so they won that. Basketball, they haven't won, I believe, since 83. Football, they got the one recently. And, so the great fans in Philadelphia. Now, getting back to you're saying right now, we're kind of in pause as far as what's going on in baseball.
Yeah, because I forget what it's over, but it's over some kind of bargaining agreement.
Yep.
So I know the spring training usually starts around Valentine's Day, but it's been delayed because of the whole.
Right.
I know minor league baseball. They'll still have minor league baseball, but not.
Yeah. Hey, that's funny because we're taping this podcast the last week of February.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm rebroadcasting the show we did, Baseball Episode 1, because I figured football's over and we need a repeat. But hey, it's a good thing. But now there's no baseball. But we're going to be airing that for a month, Episode 1. We were talking about. But I'm hoping that baseball in the next month will get their act together and get the season going.
Hopefully, because I know that if they do, they'll probably just have like a 2-week spring training or something like that.
Yep. So we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. You're very happy. Your Braves won the World Championship. Anything else you see as far as coming up in baseball, up-and-coming teams, any dark horse teams?
There are. They actually want to do expansion. They want to bring 2 new. So I heard L.A., Las Vegas and Montreal were possible sites for 2 new teams.
I didn't hear that about Las Vegas because Las Vegas, now they have 2 sports teams with hockey and football. They're definitely going to be getting an NBA team.
Well, I heard that they want to bring a baseball team back to Montreal because the fans up there want the team back. They'll just move it to the stadium they currently have that the Expos used to play at.
Yeah.
And I heard Las Vegas was another destination, or somewhere in Mexico City was a possible destination.
Wow, okay. All right. So we're going to be wrapping this show up. My name's Joe Mahan.
And I'm Steve Kuplast.
And you've been listening to Talking Baseball, Episode 3. We'll see you next time.